Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we are back as Spurs, as we mentioned previously, have advanced to Europa League, of course, quarter-final stage, where they'll be taking Eintracht Frankfurt on following that successful win over AZ Alkmaar, as we build in to, of course, Fulham to come at the weekend, and we'll be giving you all the latest views, news over the course of the last 24, 48 hours, where James Maddison, Jed Spence do not make Thomas Tuchel's first England squad. And there's been a bit of a fallout to that, a lot of different opinions as to whether they should or shouldn't have got in. Dominic Solanke has retained his England spot. He is part of Thomas Tuchel's squad for the upcoming games they've got in store. Of course, a lot of talk right now about how good Lucas Bergvall is in a Tottenham Hotspur shirt. One of the very few, I know Billy T said it recently, you could argue that Johan Langer has got a pass for life as a Tottenham sporting director following the signing of Lucas Bergvall. I'm seeing Johnny that's itching to get onto the mic. We're going to come to Johnny in that in 1 second. And also, look, there's the exciting Wilson Odobert, who I think for many out there most certainly produced his best performance in a Tottenham shirt today. A couple of big goals on a big night for Tottenham in Europe, which has seen Spurs, of course, set up that quarter-final tie against Eintracht Frankfurt. And towards the end of that game, we also did see, finally, to some degree, Archie Gray finish the game in a defensive midfield role. It's now finally the time that Archie Gray is given that opportunity as a number 6 ahead of this game at the weekend against Fulham, where Tottenham will head to Craven Cottage to take on Marco Silva's side. Look, you know, let's be honest about it. When we think about our last visit to Craven Cottage, not good memories for Tottenham there. It was on the back of a week where Tottenham got that unbelievable 4-0, 4-1 win against Aston Villa, where it seemed Tottenham were destined to finish in the Champions League, and it went so wrong at Craven Cottage. So we're talking about how Premier League form is going to impact European form, because, as Anne just said, pretty much in this last month or two, whilst he can't publicly come out and say the focus is on the Europa League, it is all on the Europa League. D, I'm going to come to you if I can to steer us to open this episode of Last Word on Spurs. Look, Spurs do advance to that quarter-final tie against Eintracht Frankfurt. That'll be over 2 legs. And let's be honest about it. We know the domestic season has been an utter mess for Tottenham, but there is still the possibility of something very special being achieved this season. D, we said when we actually did this show in advance, we're not too sure what we're going to walk into. We've walked into Tottenham being in the quarterfinals. How excited are you by that? And what did you make of the overall performance against, of course, AZ Alkmaar?
No, look, I'm absolutely buzzing, to be quite frank with you. I thought last night would have been, look, don't get me wrong, it was nervy, but I thought last night would have been a little bit more trickier than maybe what I was expecting. I'm absolutely buzzing to get into the quarterfinals of Europe, especially given what's gone on this season. And look, I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions on the ownership, the manager and players and transfer committee and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we're Tottenham Hotspur fans first, you know, and we still have, the dream is still alive. And, you know, the longer we can go in Europe, you know, the more we can sort of salvage this bad season to a large degree. Look, some would argue maybe it's just papering over the cracks and delaying the inevitable. But at the end of the day, you know, we're now going into April with still a chance of winning something, and that's all you can ask for. Look, I thought the opening 20 minutes last night was a bit cagey. I thought it took likes of Son and that a while to get into the game. And look, that's sort of understandable with the lack of confidence around the place right now. But I thought after that, you know, once we got the first goal, it really settled the nerves. And I think at half-time is where I was most impressed with, because in that situation, it's very easy to get maybe nervous, you know, not go with the game plan, be a little bit more defensive, a little bit more cautious, but we didn't. We went for their throat. We looked to go at them, and we got our rewards at the end of the day. I also think Postecoglou, despite a lot of criticism that's gone his way this season, I think he deserves a lot of praise. You know, dropping Brennan Johnson and bringing in Odobert at the end of the day, whether people should argue it should have been done a long time ago, you know, even way before Odobert got injured or whatever. At the end of the day, he made a big call, you know, heading into Tottenham's biggest game of the season, and with his job on the line, which he was under even more pressure with Pochettino's appearance on TalkSport, picking Odobert, and it paid off absolutely massively yesterday. So I think, you know, in terms of the lineup that he selected yesterday, he got absolutely spot on. His in-game substitutions, I think he got absolutely spot on, and it was a very good performance. There was a lot of pressure around us. We've been here before. We've caved against the likes of Dynamo Zagreb, Paços de Ferreira, Enes Mora, Vitesse Arnhem. it could have been another one of them nights. And I think a lot of Spurs fans were maybe anticipating that could be the outcome. But against all the odds, we end up going through. So I'm absolutely buzzing. I think happy. At the end of the day, we've had so many losses this season.
Win, 17 of them.
And it's that simple. I'm going to enjoy it. People can call me a happy clapper or what they want. I'm going to enjoy it when we win games of football. That's what I'm here to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we all know, Jacob Avenue, it has been a very, very difficult season, and one where really there's been a lot of criticism over the senior players at the football club for not stepping up. You know, I think it's the first time that we're able, Jay, to field those senior players or the leadership group actually together for the first time, you know, in a long, long time for Tottenham. And there's no doubt about it that those guys did most certainly help and carry the team through the victory, because a lot of talk has been around Spurs about how the youngsters have impressed. You know, the likes of, as we've said previously on the show, Lucas Bergvall, the likes of Archie Gray, Spence, who will come on to as well shortly as well. I think, again, it's at this point where you have to acknowledge the role the senior players play. Jay, it wasn't pretty, but it was job done on a night where, as you know as well, there was a lot of pressure heading into it.
Personally, I felt I couldn't lose last night. It was winner, winner, chicken dinner for me, because if we won, you know, 4 games away from the final. The last time we were in a quarter-final was in 2019 when we went all the way to the final, the Champions League. And if we lost, Ange was out of a job. So I couldn't lose last night. For me, it was a winning all-round, no matter what the result. Obviously, I wanted Spurs to win. First and foremost, must correct that, because people will then come at me and tell me that I would have been happy. Well, some have said that if Spurs had lost, I wouldn't have been. On
a percentage then, Jay, very quickly to let you come in back on that, what percentage would you say of you wanted Tottenham to win? 100%?
I always want Spurs to win, no matter what my feelings are, no matter how much, you know, listen, I've got to say I haven't disliked a manager this much for a long, long time. You know, I've loved a lot of the managers we've had in the past, a lot of them. I'm just not in love. You know, I've fallen out of love with Ange. I'm sure he's really bothered. No, listen, look, I think the seniors stepped up last night. I know Romero, you know, look, he's going to get a lot of criticism. Personally, I like that aggression. But once again, you know, he was guilty of being erratic on the ball at times, but his ability to play, you know, those line-breaking passes offers Spurs a way of quickly progressing up the pitch. And, you know, he relishes that man marking, and that spat that we saw with Troy Parrott. Personally, I love that. I do. I can't help it. And there was another moment where Poku, who I've got to tell you, when we're looking at players, if there was one standout player over the three games we played them, Poku was it.
Yeah,
he was going down the wing, just two arms, just pushed him straight onto the floor, and the ref didn't give anything. And then there was a header where he just literally jumped straight over the player and smashed it. I like that performance. I think the people have got to give him some pass here. You know, he's hardly played in 4 months. You can't just come back and expect to be match fit. Second of all, he only had 2 weeks break after, you know, the season last year and the Copa America and all the games pre-Copa America. And to come back, you know, with 2 weeks break and expect to last the season, I thought it was foolhardy. I thought Vicario, again, usual, voicing control at the back. There was a moment where Archie Gray, when he came on, made that pass to Maddison, which set him free for that fantastic third goal. And he was out, you know, praising him. And also, you know, when it really mattered, those 2 fantastic saves when we got cut open. And Maddison, you know, Maddison turned up. He turned up last night and he put on a show.
Yep.
Personally, I thought, Dave, that it was a bit strange, that substitution, because Odobert and Maddison were absolutely flying at that moment, and the game wasn't high, you know, dry. And when those 2 went off, you know, Mickey van der Ven had gone off, we looked vulnerable. They had more than enough chances, and as we say, he made those 2 fantastic saves, Vicario. There was one moment though, Mickey van der Ven, when Poku broke free, and had he not been playing Mickey van der Ven, he was breaking through on goal, and he not only did he make it back to cover the tackle, he didn't give away the pen. He was absolutely class. You know, I know he was only on for 60 odd minutes, but he was fantastic. And as far as Odobert was concerned last night, when you consider how few games he's played, he's had more take-ons already than Timo Werner. And I think he's only 10 take-ons less than Brennan Johnson. And, you know, when Brennan came on as a sub last night, I'm not going to sit here and have a go at him. But when you look at Odobert's skill level last night, where he was relentlessly taking them on, and he was causing trouble every time. And, you know, he's drawing players to him, he's creating space. And that's really what Spurs have been missing for such a long time, a true out-and-out threat from the flanks. And I can't wait to see him when he really becomes match fit after such a long break. I could go on, but I'll let Ash dip in now with his observations.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Ash, coming over to you, there was an understanding in terms of the game, both on and off the pitch, about how big it was. Was it nice to actually see the players recognise, Ash, just how big that game was? Because I think we spoke a lot on here about the element that when it's come to big games this season, you know, you look back at the Liverpool game in the Carabao Cup, especially the second leg, the way we started the Villa game, we can see in the opening minute, you know, in those big games, we haven't quite been at it. There was just a feeling in that game that, with all due respect, yes, AZ had their chances, but Spurs took control of the night. And I think, like Dave said, there was a lot of confidence being built there when we got the first goal, got the second goal, and yes, we had the setback, but I think the character of the group really responded well. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think the opening minutes, it was a bit nervy. I don't know about you guys. I just thought there wasn't much in it at the time, and it took one of our players pressing that in Son Heung-Min. He actually did a press, and it was successful. And I think off the back of that, when we did get the goal, when Solanke assisted Odobert for his first European goal, I think that set the tone. And then all of a sudden, the players were like, you know what? They can be got at. And I think that helped the home fans as well to get behind the team. And so that nervous energy that was in amongst the crowd started to lift the players and vice versa. And I think in the second half, it was like all guns blazing, especially for that first 20 minutes. I think the boys really stepped up, really went at them and tried to ask different questions as well. I felt like in the first half, the players, I was expecting the fullbacks to get involved and create 1v1 situations. And I think that's why it was a bit stale in the wide areas. And that's why we weren't creating a lot. And the patterns of play weren't really there because I think FC20 were happy to kind of do their kind of mid to low block and frustrate us at times. But
I've just realised we've changed team there, Ash. We've gone from we've had two teams there. We've gone from AZ Alkmaar to FC20. We played 2 on the night. I love it, Ash. We're duplicating the sides now.
Yeah, AZ, sorry.
RZ. You know, you've been right, Ricky. You've been right all along. I heard them clearly say on television last night, I meant to call you and tell you, they said RZ.
RZ. Okay.
They said RZ.
Thank you. Go on, Ash. I'm back to you. Go on, Ash.
Yeah.
I'm just glad I haven't got to say it again. Go on, Ash.
Well, no, just to like kind of echo what you guys were saying, just to wrap it up, to be fair, I just like the performance of Bergvall, because that 6th position has been spoken about a lot. And for the young player to kind of step up in that role. And I thought like winning the ball back in vital areas, I thought he was impressive. He had a lot of times where before he was a bit late, a bit rash. And I thought in this game, he was a lot better at winning his 1v1 duels. And if he can continue that throughout his next few games, and just like, you know, towards the end of the last 10 Premier League games, if he can just continue in that vein, a lot of Spurs fans will be excited, because we do have a player on our hands, in my opinion. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you mentioned Bergvall there. I think that there is that feeling, Ash, that we've got a very, very special player on our hands. I mean, Dave, look, he's a guy that, at the start of the season, there was maybe an argument about Bergvall, whether he would be able to adjust to the physicality of the league. There was even talk about him maybe going out on loan in the second half of the season. How much has it surprised you, Dave, of his adaptation across the season and his improvement that really now you're looking at him thinking, I mean, can we afford to leave this guy out? He's been that good for Tottenham, hasn't he, Lucas Bergvall, especially in his second half of the season?
Look, to be honest, I'm not surprised. When I seen him in pre-season, it was clear to me we had a real football on our hands, someone that was a good technician in that midfield, good on the ball and stuff like that. But I always said with preseason, it's not physical. You don't really get laid into. You don't really get too many challenges. So to a degree, it's good. It's easy to look good, but he looked exceptional in preseason. But I always said, coming into the Premier League, it's going to take him a while to adapt. And I think the biggest example I can give to that is that night out in Galatasaray, where anytime the ball went into him, they just picked his pocket all game long and sort of dominated him physically. But I think that was a good learning curve for Bergvall, and he's really maybe took the lessons from that game and applied it to his game. And you look at him now, he very rarely loses the ball, to be fair to him. And I think we've got one hell of a player on our hands. When you look at last night's performance, not only did he contribute defensively, but he also contributed offensively. He got in, I think he won 100% of his duels. How many interceptions did he make in that midfield? And in possession, he was good going forward. I think he comes out with a 92% pass accuracy from last night. And I think the big question is, do you actually get more out of him in that number 6 role than what you do further up in that number 8 role? And I would argue, when I look at Bergvall in that number 8 role, does he give you the creativity of a Maddison or that goal threat of a Papamata Sarr? I'm not quite so sure. So I think he is actually more suited to that deep line role, that CDM role in this midfield to a large degree. And just quickly, I want to touch on Vicario from last night, because I know Johnny brought up the leadership, but where I think Vicario deserves a lot of praise last night was the last 10 minutes of that game. How many times did he come out claiming crosses to alleviate the pressure, so that the ball wasn't bouncing around? Even there near the end, everyone's just going through the motions, setting up for the short goal kick. He says, no, everyone push up the field, and went along with it. So we're not playing ourselves into trouble. A lot of respect for Vicario last night, and that game management, something that I think has been missing for large parts when he hasn't been there. In large parts this season, someone that has that calmness in the moment, that cool head, and can just sort of give that experience to some of the other players, because we do have a young squad. And what he done is, no, we're not just, because naively they were already set back into the pattern of play again, but he said, no, push up, we're going to see this one out. And I think he deserves massive credit for that last night. He really is taking on a strong leadership role within this group. And I would question, I'm not a big fan of goalkeepers being captain, but if people aren't inspired by Son, I think you look at him or Romero.
Yeah, I wanted to say very quickly on Son, because there's been a lot of heavy criticism for Son recently. I think it was great to see Sonny involved in all the 3 goals of the game. He's had a really difficult season for him personally. And, for many to be questioning his role at the moment, whether it's as captain or whether it's his first place in the team as a starter, I think it was a really, really important night, as I said at the start of the show, that a lot of the players that were being seen as the senior players led the way, and Sonny most certainly did that last night, involved in all 3 goals. Got to say it's on Bergvall, because, again, Dave brought the stats out there. Go on, Dave. Do you want to come back in?
Yeah, sorry. One thing I wanted to finish off on Bergvall, sorry, it slipped my mind,
go for it.
is there is still improvements in these games that do need to be made going forward. Look, I'm behind the hype of Lucas Bergvall, but we have to point out where he does need to improve. He does take a lot of yellow cards, some unnecessary at times this season, but also, you look back over the 2 legs against AZ Alkmaar, he was at fault for that goal last night. He did score the own goal in the first game, and again earlier on in the season against Newcastle, he gave it away the ball in the deep position, which was turned over for a goal. So there are things in his game that still need improvement, but we do have one hell of a player on our hands. And with Johan Lang, I think he does deserve a little bit of credit, for bringing in Bergvall, the fact that he managed to swipe him in from Barcelona's noses. But what I would say when it comes to Johan Lang, I don't think it's justification that he should stay here, because for me, it's a lot of what he hasn't done has come back to hurt Tottenham more than what he has done.
Yeah, no, that's actually fair points. Just on Bergvall, and get these stats out of there, because some really good ones during the game there. He had 66 touches of the ball. He won every single one of his 7 ground duels. He succeeded in all 3 of his take-ons, and no Spurs player won the ball more times, 8, or made more than the 5 interceptions that Lucas Bergvall contributed to the game. He only also misplaced 4 of his 48 passes. So there's a really, really exciting feeling around Lucas Bergvall. I'm going to ask you, Johnny, coming over to you also about Archie Gray. As you all know, look, throughout, again, the season and through obviously being home and away, there's been this real clamour to see Archie Gray playing in that defensive mid-role. We got a glimpse of what he was like in that role. And there's a feeling, I think, that Tottenham fans are really excited to see what this maybe potential double pivot can do together in terms of Bergvall and Gray. I mean, your feeling on it, do you think we will see Archie Gray playing in that defensive mid-role from the start of a game between now and the end of the season? Is there a reason why Ad has been so hesitant to give him that opportunity, just down to simply availability of other players for you?
Listen, there was a huge cheer went up when Archie, I was probably one of the biggest cheers of the night. I think that and Mickey van der Ven going off, Bergvall going off, was Archie Gray going in and playing 5 minutes in that role. Listen, I think the future is 100% that. Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall, probably with Kulu, if I'm honest. Maddison blows hot and cold for me. But listen, when I watched that, I look back on that Chelsea game when he was playing for Leeds, and he'd been playing right back all season, and he was asked to come and play in the middle of the park in that cup game against them, and he was unbelievable for a kid of his age. He absolutely dominated that midfield and won man of the match. It's there, it's in him. But for me, just quickly going back to Lucas Bergvall, I've been told I'm overhyping, stop waxing lyrical, calm down, you're getting way ahead of yourself. I went to see him play. I don't really care, because that's what I believe. I had the same feeling when I saw Gareth Bale at 17 play for Southampton. There's just something about him. I saw him in the QPR game pre-season, and I was going on, and my QPR mate was going to me, Johnny, calm down, mate. It's fucking QPR, and I'm a QPR fan. It's nothing. I said, yeah, but it's not about that. It's peripheral vision. The way he scans the area, he's ready to, not only he knows where he's passing the ball, and he's already moving to receive the ball once he's passed it. He's brilliant in the air. I mean, he's 6'2". I don't know if people notice how good he is in aerial, right, in the middle of the park. Yeah. And I don't think people really realise just what a good all-rounder he is. And it's not just that, it's his mental strength, because as Dane pointed out, that goal that he scored, the own goal out in AZ, would have disturbed senior pros giving that goal away. Yep. He didn't affect him. He demanded the ball straight away. Yeah. He don't shirk, right? And the same, you could see in his face, when the ball ricocheted off of Odobert into the path of Koopmeisters. It's one of them things. He just got on with it. And I think he is mature way above his years. And the same goes for Archie Gray. And, we do have, isn't it ironic? I think I mentioned this last week, that so much focus is on the fact that Ange wasn't supported, and all he got was a couple of kids, and they're not going to be ready. And yet these two kids are probably the shining light of this season. They are the biggest positive of the year. And, I would have loved to have seen a Pochettino with these kids and Odobert and him. I mean, it's not going to happen, but I'm just saying, I just think there's so much potential. I don't believe that this squad is as bad as the position and how we've been playing, even with the injuries.
Just quickly, I take what you're saying there, Johnny, but the fact that these two are shining lights it's not a great thing. It's more of a good indictment on them two players, but it's still a bad indictment on the football club. The fact that we do have other senior players, and these two are the ones stepping up. That's not something to be praised about. No. Praise them individually, but it's not a good indictment for the club.
Be happy though, Dave. We should be happy. We should be happy that we've unearthed two gems instead of spending.
No, I am happy, but you're saying
65 million on
Ash, get the popcorn. It's gonna be a long one, bro.
No, instead of spending 65 million on Dombele, 30 million on Lo Celso, 25 million on Sessegnon, who contributed absolutely nothing over 5 seasons. What we've got here is 2 kids who really, the sky's the limit as far as I'm concerned with them.
No, I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying. But, we can't sit here and say, Ange was back. Look at the youngsters again. The fact that these youngsters are shining actually asks more questions of everybody else around them than anything else. It's not a good thing.
Yeah. Can I just say, actually, on Ange Postecoglou, and I think, for many going into this game, there was, as we know, there was a lot of heat on Ange Postecoglou personally. I mean, Johnny, you kind of referenced it at the start there that it was a bit of a do or die game. There were suggestions that if Tottenham would lose the game, then maybe Ange
Don't say that to him. Don't say that to Ange.
Well, look, there were suggestions, obviously, that if Tottenham lost the game, then Ange Postecoglou may have lost his job. Obviously, of course, that didn't happen. And look, the reality is that, for Ange, that's a big, big win for him. And, it's been interesting because it has been, as we've touched upon, a really, really difficult season. And a season where we've said, it's really split the Spurs fan base, into 2 when it comes to the manager. And, I mean, all you can say at the moment is that the players, they are fighting for him. Look at what Kulusevski said. I want to fight for him. He's the right man. I really, really like him a lot. His tactics, his mentality. That's the guy you want to work with. Mickey van der Ven said recently, look, we all have the trust in the gaffer and the team. I think he's a top manager. He's really clear in what he wants to do and sticks by his principles. Jed Spence says, look, the manager has our full support. We are all behind him. We want to show that by winning games. He's our manager. We are a team. We all fight for him. And at the end of the day, that is the most important thing. Sonny has said, I'm all in. I'm loving the way he wants to play. It's the first time I've experienced this. Vicario has said we are fully behind him, very committed to what we're doing. I think we have proved that we're 100% focused and committed, and we can show what we're capable of. Cuti Morero says he's a great coach. We saw it in the first season. We are very, very happy with his staff, me and my colleagues. We love how they work, and they thought they want to try and play. Archie Gray has said we always trust the manager. He knows best, and he also knows for me, wherever he puts me on the pitch, I'm going to give 100% commitment. And that's the thing, at the moment, there is almost that ringing endorsement from the players that they're very happy to play under him. And look, there could be 2 ways you want to frame that. You could argue that, look, for a lot of those players out there, that was a massive, massive game in the context, not only Tottenham season, their own personal careers. It's an opportunity to progress through to, obviously, of course, the next round of Europe, a quarter-final. You would expect the players to play like that. But at the end of the day, I think there were, for many out there, may have seen certain traits that were really missing with that term Ange ball over the course of the last 2-3 months. The third goal especially was a goal that was reminiscent of when things were going right under Ange. Those were the kind of goals Spurs were producing. And I think, right now, it's an interesting take as to where things are going to be. I think he will get to the end of the season, but it'll be interesting to see if Ange can motivate the players in the Premier League games as much as the European games. I think what will be really key now is how he does manage that. I'm going to pivot slightly because that conversation could take us into a dangerous area. We've got to pivot away. And I'm going to come to Ash because we've had the recent squad announcement of England. And that squad announcement has seen that Dominic Solanke has retained his England place in that squad. But neither Jed Spence or James Maddison are part of Thomas Tuchel's first England squad. Look, be honest about it, there was a lot of feeling going into this squad announcement for those that are massively into their international football, which, can I just say to you, I'm not massively into it myself, that there was a feeling that both Spence and Maddison would have a great chance. Ange Postecoglou has spoken since and believes Spence and Maddison will be in the frame for England if they keep on performing the way they are for Tottenham. But like we said, there's been no space for them in the England squad. And just said, look, I'm pretty critical of myself when it comes to selection, so I'm going to be the last person that's going to be dictating to the England manager who he should and shouldn't pick. Maddison's had a really challenging season for us. He's grinded his way through and he's had the quality in these last few weeks to really show what he's about. He's obviously got on a spell every now and then. And I thought, again, you saw him being the catalyst for us in an attacking sense against AZ and worked very, very hard for the team. Jed has been super for us this season. I always feel these things, particularly when it's the national team selection, it's never a kind of thing where you just draw a line for it. I have no doubt if Jed keeps performing the way he is and Maddison keeps working hard, I'm sure Thomas will look at both of them across the board in his upcoming squads to come, and I'm sure both of them will be in the frame. Are you surprised, Ash, neither Maddison or Spence are in the squads for these upcoming England games against Albania and Latvia FIFA World Cup qualifiers?
Spence more so than Maddison. I think with Maddison, he's had our actual fan base divided, where he's been hot and cold throughout the season. When we've needed him and he needed to be our leaders, sometimes, we look towards Maddison, he hasn't been there. So maybe that's the thinking of Tuchel. He's thinking, I need a player that's a bit more. And if we're being honest, Rodgers has been a bit more consistent as an attacking mid. Cole Palmer, obviously, even though he hasn't been that consistent this season, as a number 10, I think Palmer edges it over him. So it's not easy in that position. And Bellingham, Jude Bellingham, obviously, he's doing bits for Real Madrid. So Maddison's gonna miss out on that particular position. And I look at the system as well, how Ange deploys Maddison compared to how maybe the New England manager would deploy Maddison. It might be slightly different. Does he want his number 10 to kind of roam and pick up the ball from deep? I know Palmer does it at times, but again, you've got a younger profile there that has more, especially last season, from the top of my head, has a lot more goal contributions. With Spence, again, you can have the argument where Spence is playing a fullback. Maybe he wants to play wing backs. And I think Spence could do the wing back role. So I don't know, but maybe because he's a right-footed player playing on the left, he's maybe looking at other players that are left-footed that can play in that position, and he wants to utilize the passing angles, the passing lanes. We've seen how different it was when Van der Ven is playing for us at centre-back as a left-sided centre-back compared to maybe like a Danso. Is a massive uplift. And football's all about angles, all about triangles. And when you're trying to play a certain system and you're trying to play out from the back, you need your centre backs and your full backs to be able to get out as quickly as possible, not maybe take an extra touch to get onto their favoured foot. So that's my only caveat against it. But I'm with most Spurs fans. I think Spence has played remarkably well over the last few over the last few games. The other argument you could say, maybe because Spence hasn't had as many games as some of those other players, but with Skelly, he's been a bit rash at times. I felt like he's picked up a few bookings. In fact, it's been sent off. So maybe that's questionable. You can have an argument there. But yeah, like generally, if I'm looking at the England squad without my Spurs goggles on, yeah, man, I just was surprised with Henderson, bro. I'll be honest with you. I was like, what are we doing? Retirement home? Like, what's going on here? It was a bit of a shock. And then there's Rashford is debatable. But I think there's other players that could have got in that England squad for me. There's a lot more form players in there. But yeah, that's how I just see it, bro. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, many might feel there's a heavy Chelsea influence in there. I mean, Johnny, I hope I'm saying this. I mean, off air, you seem very, very surprised when we first got on here that Spence especially did not get an England call up. And, again, it's interesting because as we've spoke about, and you spoke about it as well, Spence has been deployed at both a right back and a left back and has probably been one of the best left backs in the Premier League since he's burst onto the scene. So, I mean, I'm right in saying that you're quite surprised, Johnny, that Spence hasn't got that inclusion.
Well, I was so convinced he was going to be in that I actually did a video of him England calling, which had to be hastily deleted. But look, I don't get what Thomas Tuchel is talking about. I really don't, because you've got no Lewis Hall, you've got no Trent Arnold, Kyle Walker is he's aging, his legs aren't as good. This is the type of game that you would look to be looking at new players with a view to bring them in, in the important games. And here you've got a player in Jed Spence who's versatile, left foot, right foot, invert, wing back. He can do it all. He's got the physicality, which is what he said in his press statement. I'm looking for players with physicality. He's got the physicality, he's got the pace, and he's got the technique. And there was some moves last night where, let's be honest, bar a bit of luck, he could have had 2 or 3 assists last night. It's baffling. Jordan Henderson ahead of Adam Walton, mind-blowing. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Konsa, I just honestly, Rashford I didn't get. I mean, I don't think he's been anywhere near good enough. Lewis Skelly, I'm sure he's going to be really good moving forward, but was it 2 red cards in 5 games? Is that really what you want? I think there was a lot. Listen, I'm not surprised that Maddison didn't make it. For me, he's not robust enough to play in a Thomas Tuchel type of game. So I'm not surprised there. And Solanke has that physicality that Tommy Tuchel is probably looking at. But as far as Jed's concerned, I think he's just got to get his head down and just hope that something happens, because on form right now, there isn't a better left back in the country than him on current form. Maddison, I think, maybe you should look at taking up darts for England rather than the England midfield, because I just don't think Tommy Tuchel is the man for him. I think another manager playing a different style might well look at him, especially, when you're looking for some creativity, because we do know that on his day and when he's on form, that Maddison can unlock defence. But I was surprised.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think me and Dave have got the same interest in England, probably. I mean, I've got very little interest when it comes to international football, Dave. I'll be honest.
He's Irish. Of course he's not.
I know that. That's why I said it. But I mean, the thing for me is that, look, I know there's a lot of Tottenham fans actually saying during the show here that the thing is, I mean, I'm quite happy to keep him here. With the season that we've had with our injuries, Dave, I don't know if you agree, wouldn't be a bad thing that both of them aren't selected. I'd like the focus to be on Tottenham right now, because we've got a massive, of course, European journey still to go on. And these guys are going to get rested and obviously have the opportunity to put their feet up for a week or so. I'm happy with that, Dave. Are you kind of the same mindset mentality?
Yeah, look, I'm more than okay with it, to be honest with you. I do think an England call would have maybe given Jed Spence a real boost and maybe Maddison a real boost, coming after the international break. However, in terms of fitness and injuries and how important, James Maddison is when he plays well, and how important Jed Spence has been ever since he's come into the team, I think it's absolutely brilliant to get them a rest. And not run the risk of injury. When it comes to Jed Spence, I'm actually quite surprised he didn't make the England squad, though. I think when you look at him, he can play left and right. I think you look at the England squad, one area they probably lack is really good fullbacks. And I think Jed Spence, for me, I thought would have been a shoe, and I thought he would have walked in. The amount of games that Thomas Tuchel has watched of Tottenham, I'm actually very surprised he hasn't picked them. In terms of James Maddison, to be brutally honest, I'm not surprised. When he's on it, he's really good, but there's very few and far in between. There's not enough consistency. And when your club manager doesn't have enough trust in you to pick you week in, week out, how do you expect an international manager to pick you week in? You put trust in you to pick you when them games come about, especially when he's got other players that are playing week in, week out that he can select. So, and I think that's one thing that James Maddison probably needs to understand himself to a certain degree, because, after the Roy Keane criticism, he was very quick to clap back at him, but then went quiet then for another game or two. And I think he's missing what people are trying to say to him. If you really want to get back to the England squad, you need to be on it week in, week out. Look at the likes of Rodgers, Bellingham, Cole Palmer to a degree, although he's not that this season, but, for a large period, he's at every single game, affecting games. Even Eze to a degree, absolutely everything goes through him. That's not the case at Tottenham with James Maddison, and he needs to make himself that player if he really wants to get in amongst the players that are in and around him, in terms of selection. But yeah, look, I'm more than happy to keep them around, not run the risk of injury. Hopefully then fresh for the big Chelsea game on the return.
Come on, Dave. You know it's going to happen, right? We're going to keep them fit. So what's going to happen? They get injured in training at Tottenham, no doubt. No doubt. Let's hope
surely they go easy on him. Surely they go easy on him. Poor Dan, so the latest one of the victims that has been dropped. I'm trying to. Has there been any player that's avoided injury this season? Porro is probably the only one that Porro. Yeah,
I think Porro.
Porro is probably the only player that's not picked up an injury, and I can see Ash also doing some thinking there. I think Porro is the only player of the whole squad that hasn't picked up an injury.
The tea lady was out. The tea lady was out for a couple of weeks.
Well, they've all had injuries. They've all had injuries. I think quite interestingly, Ash, coming over to you and has admitted that Tottenham are already now starting to pre-plan ahead of the fact that they are going to be facing Eintracht Frankfurt. I need to completely change the name there in this, of course, quarter final coming our way. How does he balance that, Ash, in your view? We've still got 10 Premier League games left to go. Is he using these Premier League games as almost a kind of ploy to thinking, right, I've got to know my best team when it comes to Frankfurt? How does he motivate the players to keep their eyes on the prize when it comes to the Europa League, given our league form right now, which we know is, look, again, Spurs' league form and where they are really in terms of the table. We currently sit, for those that can bear looking at it at the moment, we are 13th in the table. We're 34 points. We are, oh God. I mean, Fulham are on 42, to put that into perspective. So they're what, 8 points ahead of us? I mean, how do you feel is going to motivate the group between now and the next Europa League fixture in your mind, Ash?
I think it's the other way around. I think it's more motivation for the Premier League games, because I think you shouldn't need to motivate a player for a Europa quarter.
No, my apologies. What you're actually answering there is a point I'm getting at. What you just said there.
Oh, right. So
how do you think he is going to be able to keep this team motivated in between these European games?
Luckily for him, we've got international break. But before that, we obviously play Fulham, and I think personally, you have to take each game as they come and just treat them individually. You can't really go too far ahead in terms of, thinking about Europa Cup, etc., etc. So he's just got to isolate the situation, and he wants to win every single game, because he knows that he's still been under the microscope, not just by maybe people above him, not just by fans, but by the media, because I think the media has a lot to say in how we look at Ange and the perception of it. Do you understand? So he needs to take the games very seriously, move up the table as quickly as possible as well, because he doesn't want to finish anywhere below 10th. He wants to climb that table as quickly as possible, win as many games as possible, to prove to the people that are backing him as well that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And yes, when I do have my players back, actually, if you look at the players we do have, we can push up and we can have a strong finish. Therefore, I should stay in my job. So I think that's the angle he's going to be. He won't need any motivation, but to motivate the actual players themselves, he's going to want to say to them, look, you do need to look at this opposition and raise your game as a professional footballer. At the end of the day, you're getting paid X amount of money. It's a privilege. But to the fans, you owe them after the season. You've more or less given them. Do you know what I mean? So I think he needs to come from that particular angle to motivate each and every player. But every player should be, if they are saying they are behind him, the likes of Kulusevski, the likes of Jed Spence,
Vicario,
then they need to Vicario as well. They need to show it in the games that are remaining. They need to put the shirt on and show what they're worth and why they are such top players. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, it's interesting, Dave, isn't it? Because again, with Ange, you was on it last week, and again, I've been in agreement with you that I don't think everything is definitely his fault in the way the season has panned out. But it's interesting. Ash says there that he needs to climb that table quickly. I really do think now it does come down to what happens in the Europa League, which will determine Ange Postecoglou's role. I think. I keep kind of in my mind. I keep flittering between this. I keep thinking if he gets to the final, has he got to win the final to keep the job? And I don't know. What's your engagement for you now, Dave? Because again, his name hasn't been sung since Southampton away, and Johnny can correct me if that's wrong. I'm going back to, November, December? We're now in March. What do you think, Dave? Do you still think the jury is out, or do you think there's still a massive possibility if he was to really pick up his Premier League form, that would give fans a confidence if we did reach the latter stages of this competition going into next season, where there could be a ploy to keep Ange Postecoglou? How'd you gauge it for you, Dave?
Look, the jury's still out on Ange Postecoglou. I think many Spurs fans, when you look around social media, YouTube, all that sort of stuff, and the Spurs fans I speak to, I think many people are sort of off the Ange train now. They're not really with him. It's more or less up to him to prove that he can sort of build something here between now and the end season and really get fans back on side. I think that's where most people are sort of at with Ange Postecoglou, bar, some of the fans that maybe Ange has brought along with him. But we talk about motivation for the Premier League games. You know, we've only lost one of our last 5. We won 3 and drawn 1 against Bournemouth. So, you know, you could make the argument that the Premier League form is actually picking up to a large degree. It wasn't so long ago when we were on here talking about being above the relegation zone. That's no longer a conversation. So you could argue that the Premier League results are picking up. You know, obviously they're not picking up as much as we want them to. You know, obviously the performances maybe in some of the games haven't been there. But at the end of the day, you know, as long as he's in that Europa League, he still has a chance of turning this around at Tottenham Hotspur. Because reality is now, you know, the big talk was, would he go after his AZ Alkmaar last night? Some are calling him Easy Alkmaar, by the way, now after we dispatched him last night. But
we've got to get that team out of the way, because I forgot it right from the start from what Jay was saying.
No, but the big thing around Postecoglou was, if he went out, does he deserve to keep his job? And I think the general consensus was no. But now he's here till mid-April anyway, and the season only goes until mid-May. So there's only going to be one season left, you know, after the Frankfurt, 1 month left after Frankfurt games, really. So it's sort of, the reality is he's here now really until more or less the end of the season. And for me, it's just about, can he get us into Europe, into a European final, and can he pick up that league form? Because if we win tomorrow, we're only 5 points behind Fulham. And don't get me wrong, I know some people watched this back and came in the comments going, we should never be 5 points behind Fulham. I fully get it. But I'm just taking it from where we are now. If we can win that, all of a sudden, if you can close the couple of gap over the next couple of games, you're talking about getting back inside the top half of the table. And then upon reflection, if you get into the semi-final, you've had a semi-final of League Cup. You know, once the injuries have come back, and just probably to a degree then being proven right, that results will improve. And then all of a sudden, different conversations around the place. Now, look, what I will say is nobody has any faith that that's going to happen. The reality is, as long as he's still fighting away in the Europa League, and as long as the players are still fighting for him, which you read out some of the quotes, it's clear that they are happy with him being here and stuff like that. He's always got a chance to prove people wrong.
Yeah, it's when you said, Dave, that Fulham's picked up. We're now no longer in the relegation zone. I thought, God, what kind of season have we had on this show?
Exactly.
That even the fact we're having these conversations, I could see Johnny nearly fall off his chair when he sort of Dave said that. Johnny's eyes got so wide there. I thought we were going to have a Johnny, you know, you said it earlier in the show for you. You know, you said, I know you meant it jokingly. It was win-win, and you know, had we gone out a lot. But I know from you deep down that you love this football club, and there would have been nothing more that you would have wanted to. You would have not wanted to see Tottenham lose the game. You know, I know you would not have wanted to see Tottenham lose the game. In your mind now, because I mean, again, and I must just frame this as well for listeners and audio. I'm sure Jay, you'll also suggest this, that when we say the disliking of a manager, it's nothing personal. It's about the style and it's about the brand. It's whether it's sustainable. Is there anything, Johnny, he could do between now and the end of the season if he did go on a 10-game unbeaten run, you know, which would actually match really what he did at the first 10 games of his opening tenure at Tottenham, and he did go and deliver the Europa League? Would there be anything to change your mind, or do you just feel you've seen enough in the past 17, 18 months to be able to make a judgment that in your mind it simply isn't going to be sustainable long term?
I always want my team to win.
Yep.
I had so many messages yesterday. You must be gutted we won. No, right? I wasn't gutted we won. I don't travel all up and down the country, going abroad, going here, there, and everywhere.
Can I just say, if you know what this man is spending to go away, you might not want to divulge it on here because his wife might kill him. Mine might kill me. But
I spent, you know, I give up my time. I give up to go and see the team. So to insinuate to me that I want us to lose is a huge insult, right? Not every manager is for every fan, and you know, he isn't for me. But you know, I've said this to you before. I'd be only too happy if he delivers the title. All he's got to do is win 4 games or not get beaten. Win 2 games, draw 2 games to get to the final. That's all he needs to do. Win 2, draw 2 to get to the final. Okay, and become a legend. Sorry, he could have been a legend. But look, the thing is, for me, it's important. Momentum is important, and I think we have to go out there and start winning every game.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. We already know that for the last 5 international breaks, we've lost. The game before the international break, I think it's the last 5. It might be 6.
Yeah, I think it might be. You are right, and definitely it's been the last 5. 100% the last 5.
Now it was fantastic. We were up for it last night. Let's see how up for it they are against Fulham. Will they have that same intensity and desire to win as they had last night against an AZ team let's be honest, missing 5 of their better players, 3 of their top attacking players. I don't know. Look, there is no excuses now. Okay, there are no more excuses. I think I'd like to see us gel up front, and I'm hopeful that Odobert, with his direct approach, is drawing players in and creating space for the likes of Maddison and others to exploit. So I would like to see us progress. And if he went on and didn't get beaten between now and the end of the season, and we got to a final, fantastic. Is getting to the final and like winning and losing another 3 or 4 games. I mean, I think we've only got to lose 2 more games to be the worst.
I think it's actually 1 to equal. It's 1 to equal. You're right. A couple of games to equal our worst ever.
Yeah.
Losing run in a single domestic season. I think it's actually, I think before the Premier League was even formed, it's a really horrendous stat.
So
we have still got to go away. We've got to go away to Anfield. Got to go away to Stamford Bridge. So there's some tough games in there. But I mean,
there is. I'm just going to say, look, I just think that those first 10 games seem to be masking a lot of fans. I don't know. Their heads buried in the sand. We've lost 34 games.
Yeah.
Since November. Was Chelsea November 2003?
It feels like that long. 2003 to 2023.
34 games, and I've been to the majority of those losses. And let me tell you, I'm not a bok. It's nothing to do with me, but I just feel like it's disheartening. So you got to understand, guys. I know, fans that sit on the couch. I'm not saying I'm a better fan or the fans that go away are more deserving, but you have to understand when you put as much effort in as fans, much more than even myself, go to all these games to become disillusioned at some point when you suffer that many losses and get angry about it. But I said I will come here quite happily and eat humble pie if Ange is lifting the Europa League trophy in Bilbao. Do I think it can happen? I very much doubt it, because we got Eintracht Frankfurt, Lazio, and maybe Bilbao, 3 really tough games. But if we do, he would have deserved it, and he would deserve the praise. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I'm in 100%. John, just one final thing to ask you before we do look ahead to Fulham. We had obviously the news over the last week that Spurs have frozen season ticket prices for next season. I mean, look, given the current situation that we're in, they couldn't. I mean, could they have upped them? They couldn't really. Could they have, Johnny? They could have done. But I mean, what's your take on that?
I don't think so. And just by the way, all those comments you read out before, they were lovely comments, weren't they? We love Ange. Ange is brilliant. Right, guys, come on. Right, there is a PR team. The players are encouraged to make posts in the social media.
You say that, I mean, but no one's. As far as we're aware, no one's put a gun to Vicaria's head when he was saying that in the press.
No. But they are. I'm not saying that. I said, but they are encouraged to toe the line, and they are reminded from game to. Actually, someone was saying to me before. We were talking about XG, and how they had a better XG than us. I think you said last night, was it 3.1 to us?
Yeah.
I mean, where was football? Before XG came along? I mean, it wasn't until 2012, from the birth of football to 2012, there was no such thing as XG. And now it seems to be like part and parcel of every conversation. You win or you lose. Oh, we lost the game, but we had a better XG. Or we won the game, but they had a better XG. I just prefer to see what I'm seeing with my eyes and the chances created and stuff.
I did say, Jay, I will check out officially if we start getting corners for XG and stuff like that. I don't think I can carry on. I don't mind reading the XG stats out, but when we start going into intricate detail of XG on throw-ins or XG on corners, I can tell you that is me out. And there'll be a lot of people that will be delighted by that. There might be. Look, we want to look ahead to Fulham. We most certainly do. It's interesting because, again, Marco Silva has had a really, really good stint at Fulham, hasn't he? Really, when you look at the progress they've done, they've continuously really lost their best players in the last few years. And they've really cemented themselves now as an established Premier League side. Not only just that, they're obviously in a position where they could actually achieve a European place this season. That's how good they've been. And just ahead of the game, that we're looking pretty good in terms of fitness. Of course, Rodrigo Bentancur is back and available after that suspension that he faced. Fraser Forster, Anton Kinski, Sergio Reguilon, and Timo Werner, they're also back and available after being eligible for the clash versus AZ. Kevin Danso, Dejan Kulusevski, and Richarlison remain sidelined through injury, although Ange Postecoglou did say that he hopes to have Danso, Kulusevski, and potentially Richarlison available after the international break. Just quickly on this, Fulham, Ash, what you made of Fulham this season? They're a side that, to be fair, like I've said, they've really lost their best players over the last few seasons. Lots of Mitrovic, of course. He's been a focal point for them. They lost him. You know, Marco Silva's really rebuilt sides and done a really good job with them, hasn't he? He's really made them a really difficult side to beat, especially at home. Craven Cottage is a difficult place to go, like we experienced last season.
Yeah, I like the fact that he's quite flexible in his tactics. He can change from back 3 into a back 4. I do like how he's improved, in my opinion. Iwobi was at obviously Arsenal, didn't quite work out there and went down to Everton, wasn't doing too well there either. He's come to Fulham, and we're seeing a player that was quite effective against us, if I remember right. Smith Rowe, obviously, he was injury prone quite a bit, and he's taken him and he's used him in a position where he's in that kind of 10 role, or people call it 8, whatever you want to. Just a very good attacking midfielder. And then Jimenez had the head injury, didn't he? And he's managed to get some type of form. You've also got the midfielder, I think, controlling a lot of the play with Sander Berg. I really like him. I like how he controls the midfield. He keeps the ball ticking, and then sometimes he can switch, but when he needs to press, he can press. He's good positionally. So that's a player I really do like. I've got a few options off the bench as well. I know they've got the striker as well. I forget his name, but there's a striker that he came off the bench last time. Muniz, that's it. Muniz, yeah. Came off the bench.
Good striker.
And he caused us havoc last time at Craven Cottage. So I won't be forgetting him in a second. So, but yeah, I think he's done a great job. And because quite a few admirers he has over the job that he's done at Fulham. But yeah, I think like with Ange, just real quickly, just to go back on that point, I think this season he would have learned the most he's learned over his whole career in this particular season, in my opinion, dealing with the injuries, expectations, etc., with the fans. But let's get it right. Let's have it right, man. I think it's not just him under pressure. I think Langer is also under pressure as well, in terms of getting it right. I think if Ange was to go, for example, I think Langer would be up for, he'll be up for his orders as well. People will be looking at his position, and we know with Paratici, he's been linked away for AC Milan, so he's done a lot for our club, and he's restructured obviously the academy. He's structured the way we operate as a football club. So that job there, I know Levy listens to him quite a bit, actually respects him. So with Langen looking at his CV, I'm not too sure if going into the summer window, if he has the same pull as someone like Paratici does. But yeah, going back onto that Fulham game, obviously Robertson had a phenomenal season, in my opinion, in terms of a wing back. He can cause us a lot of troubles getting up and down that left-hand side. But equally, I look at the weaknesses, because it's important to mention some of their weaknesses. I think Bassi can be got at, Diop as well can be got at, and Castagna on the other side. I think those players there, they can be got at defensively. Anderson's, for me, he's been up and down since he switched over from Palace. I think Odobert is going to be the key. I like how Odobert was in those central areas as well. I think we haven't mentioned that, how he's comfortable, really quick feet, able to take on his man on the inside or on the outside, makes him really unpredictable. Weight of pass as well was good into Maddison, who then fed to Son, and Son put it back to Maddison, who finished that goal. So Odobert, equally as he is good on the left, he's equally as good on the right. Now he's looking a bit more refined when he did finish those 2 goals. I was questioning his end product at times. I just need to see that in a consistent basis for me to say, yeah, Odobert's that guy. Because I do think he's a bit raw still in terms of crossing the ball into the box, etc. But I know they're coaching him to say, we just want you to whip the ball across the box, just like Brennan, and we want you to be on the back post, just like Brennan. And so that's why everyone's looking at Brennan sideways, because he did score those type of goals that he did yesterday. The difference is he's able to take his
more direct. I would agree on that, Ash. Well, certainly a lot more direct. And actually said ahead of the game, Dave, that when he was asked if we can make changes, did look, yeah, I think we need to. We saw how hard it is. Backing up the Sunday to Thursday isn't, it's not easy. It's a massive task for us. It helps that we're, from our perspective, going to be going into a game where we've got a much more healthy squad to choose from. But I think again at the same time, it's going to be a tricky one, Dave, isn't it? Again, we look at the fact that although Spurs, to be honest with you, haven't had to go away in Europe, they've been at home. Craven Cottage has been a difficult place, definitely last season for Spurs to go. In the past, I've had, fairly decent record there, but it's fair to say that Marco Silva's made that place a bit of a fortress when it comes to the bigger sides. I mean, what are you expecting, Dave, to go up there for Tottenham? Because you said earlier about the fact if we can win this game, we do close the gap to Fulham. How do you see Spurs approaching this one? And already when Ange is saying we're going to make changes for it. We just need to unmute Dave if we can from his end.
Sorry, first of all, I think, it's right that Postecoglou makes changes. You look at some of the losses we've suffered off the back of Europe, the likes of Ipswich off the back of Galatasaray. I think Palace was another defeat. Was that off the back of Roma, I think? So our record off the back of Europe isn't great. I think we've only won 2 or 3 games in the Premier League off the back of Europe this season. So it's not great. So he does need to make changes to freshen it up. In terms of what them changes may look like, I wonder, will Van de Ven come in and start from the off, given that he was taken off 60 minutes? Do you really want to risk him? Because Fulham, let's be quite frank, one thing they do well is kick the shit out of us on the football pitch. They pull us down at every opportunity, and the referee doesn't usually pull out a card until about 89 minutes and to get to grips with it. That's one thing they're very, very good at. So, do you want to run that risk with Van de Ven? If you want to try and keep him, for the Europa League, I'm not sure you do. I think Udogie probably comes in. Whether that's for Porro or Spence, I would probably argue Spence might end up dropping out with Udogie coming in. I think you'll see Bentancur come back in the midfield with maybe Papamata Sarr dropping out. And then into the forward line, I'd argue if he really wants to go and win it, Postecoglou, and, put his hat in the ring to try and build some momentum and keep his job here, he shouldn't change up that front three from midweek. I think he should go with the same. I think, he can make 2 or 3, 4, maybe 3 or 4 changes to the starting lineup, and then the rest you can make later on in the game. So for me, I would like to see a hybrid of that. But Fulham ain't going to be easy. One thing Fulham do to us is they just pull us down every time we look to go forward and get 11 men behind the ball. I can remember many games under Marco Silva where I'm sitting there screaming at the ref to get a hold of it, and then all of a sudden he doesn't pull out a card to like 87, 89 minutes when the damage is already done. So it's going to be a tough game. I even remember a cup game down there under Pochettino. I think it was Kevin Nkudu who stepped up with a winner late on in the FA Cup, So it is a difficult place to go. It's not going to be easy. And I do rate Marco Silva. I think he's been a very good manager. I think he was very good at Fulham. I think he done what he could at Everton, and what the job he's done at Fulham, I think he deserves big praise. I think they've took points off Arsenal there this season at home, Chelsea, and there's a couple of other teams that they've took big points off as well. So, for anyone that thinks, or are gassed up after the win at the weekend, I think this is going to be easy. It's not. We're going to have to fight, and it's going to be a scrappy game, probably decided by a goal either side, to be honest with you.
Would he be on your shortlist, Dave? Marco Silva, if Tottenham are looking to make a change, would he be up there for you?
I like him. Don't get me wrong. I think he's done a great job. But for me, we can sit here and say we want a manager that's going to tweak this, that, and the other. But reality is, when you look at a lot of the top clubs, managers don't tweak too much. They definitely don't tweak the style of play game to game. They have the style and the philosophy. They might tweak little things within it. It depends what you want Tottenham Hotspur to be. For me, I think we're doing the right move, sort of, to a large degree, bringing in managers with their steadfast way of believing or the way of playing. I think where never matches up is the recruitment. You go back under all the managers we've had since Pochettino. You look at Nuno, who's my case study. Look at recruitment for him and what we got out of him compared to Nottingham Forest recruitment they've made and what they've got out. And for me, that's always been the biggest thing for me.
They also allowed Nuno to have his coaches, didn't they, Dave? That was probably one of the biggest things. We didn't give Nuno his coaching stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So for me, I think recruitment is absolutely massive. And I just think if you go and bring in a manager that is changing his tactics every game, I can tell you now that will not wash with Spurs fans over the course of a season. I'm telling you now it won't.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I'll ask Ash the same thing. Ash, for you, you mentioned Silva earlier, the fact that you've liked the way he's adapted and he can change from a back 3 to a back 2 in there. Would he be someone, Ash, you'd be having on your shortlist if Tottenham were looking to change the manager in the summer?
Doesn't excite me, but at the same time, I wouldn't be mad. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I do like. There's other managers I do like, but he is Premier League proven, so I do see where it does make sense. And as I said, he has made improvements on certain players.
Yep.
Another. People used to call him a failed Mourinho. You know, like wash Mourinho because he's Portuguese. I think he's stayed in the Premier League. He's done his thing.
He's rebuilt his reputation, hasn't he? He's rebuilt his reputation now. He's rebuilt that.
So that's where I stand with Marco Silva. Like I do get it. I do understand the hype, but for me, it wouldn't excite me if he was going to come in.
But it's funny actually say that. I mean, for me, when I think about Marco Silva, I think he's rebuilt his reputation. Why would he then come to Spurs and destroy it? Because we destroy it with a lot of managers. The thing with Marco Silva is with a lot of the managers that we've had in the past, and Dave's touched upon it, these guys need specific players for their system. And even though I say this with Ange Postecoglou, this is why, again, I've said this, and again, this is not to roll Johnny at all. I think Johnny will also agree on this. I think, when you've got a manager like Ange Postecoglou that wants a certain specific kind of profile of player, and you don't give them those players, how are any of these managers meant to work? And I keep saying this on every single show that I just feel, as much as you can look at the injuries, which again have been a massive part of the reason why we have the season that we've had. I think recruitment, which is what Dave touched upon actually in the last show of last Friday, which I think got lost in there, that message where I think a lot of people were suggesting, I think that Dave was maybe defending the manager. I think what Dave was more making the point, when Dave can qualify as he needs to, is that the recruitment has been so poor under every single manager. They never quite got the tools they need to do the job. And that's where I look at Marco Silva, bringing it into you here, Johnny, that I think when you look at Silva's job that he's done at Fulham, the reason why he's been successful there is that he's been given players to work in a system that he wants them to work in. Whereas I think with Tottenham, as we've seen, really, you're given players and you've kind of got to fit them in a jigsaw to some degree when it comes to club signings. I mean, would Silva be someone that you'd consider, Johnny? Or do you think, what's your take on it?
Well, I just think Silva, if we're talking about anyone about support, Silva has had half of his better players ripped away from him. Mitrovic, Paulinho, and he's had to rebuild. I said, listen, I'm still suffering trauma from last year's 3-0 defeat with Ange Postecoglou doing his Madame Tussauds impression before he realised that he was in a game of football and he better do something. It was all too late. And then I think back to the game before that was the cup game where he made 9 changes and the tree was in goal, and he was still falling to make those penalty saves. It was a disaster. Listen, I think he's a good manager. I'm with Ash. Doesn't excite me. I'm Iriola, Hernis, potentially Terzic. But I think I want a younger, dynamic, flexible manager. And listen, Silva is that. He plays a bit of a 4-2-3-1. He uses a flexible system. Likes to play the ball from out wide. Emphasising basically on getting the ball across the box. Alex Iwobi's been a real good player for them this season. And as Ash mentioned before, Robinson, Anderson, as he mentioned as well, Ash, he's been sort of a bit hit and miss, but he is fantastic. That diagonal ball over the top, really good. Smith Rowe will have a point to prove tomorrow, but they have 1 clean sheet at home in the last 18 games.
Interesting.
Which should be very encouraging to us.
Yeah.
Let's
until you read our record.
Yeah, until you reckon ours. But everything is possible. Look, I think the thing is, for me, I just want to see. I don't want snakes and ladders football. I don't want 1 good game, 2 bad, 2 good games, and then we slide back down the snake, and we're back to square one. You're in the wrong game here, Johnny. Well, no, but I mean, listen, I think, I'd like to see consistency. I think we'd all like to see consistency from our club. Yeah, we're not asking, to be, Man City overnight. What we're asking for is to, have a gritty scrape through a 1-0 win or a 2-1 win. It wasn't pretty, but we got there. We want to see fight and spirit. And, you know, I'm going to Fulham for my sins on Sunday. And, you know, as I said, I don't mind the losing if I come away from that game and I see that the players gave everything. And you cannot say that for a lot of these games. I mean, we rested players before the was it Ipswich game or Leicester game? And then we lost.
Joe, I've got to put with our squad with the injuries. I forgot who we have rested and who we haven't rested because we've had about 13, 14 out. You know what? You're right, Johnny. You know, you go to these games in the hope that you're going to see some form of progression. You're going to see some form of, you know, a feeling that you're going to see some consistency, but you just don't know. I mean, I think the hard thing now with the Premier League is because I'm not suggesting this is a reason why we should allow this to happen. When there is very little to play for and you're, to some terms, I hate to say this, on the beach, which we are in terms of the Premier League, we're not going to get relegated. You know, it's going to be very, very hard now to get any form of a European place. We're almost stuck, really. You know, I was going to say mid-table. We're not mid-table. We're below mid-table.
We wish.
We're trying to find a motivational tactic to steer us through. And I think, again, what will be on the player's mind is, which you'd imagine is, can't afford to get injured, cannot afford to get injured when it comes to, of course, for them, a crunch quarter-final that's coming our way against Frankfurt. Look, in terms of going into the game, as we said, Spurs are 13th place, 12 points below the top 7 spots, and 17 points clear of the relegation zone, which again is a reason why this fixture to some degree may have a bit of a, from a Tottenham perspective, a feeling of what is the motivation for. You know, Fulham, we touched on their home record, which Johnny mentioned earlier. They have only lost 4 of their subsequent 18 matches across all competitions, although one of those reverses came at the MX last weekend. Fulham, as we've said, their consistency at home has been harder to come by in recent weeks, although Fulham have also just won one of their last 7 Premier League fixtures at Craven Cottage. So you could argue that they're not in the greatest run of form at home, but like the guys have touched upon, they have beaten quite a lot of high-profile sides there. And if Tottenham are not on their game, we have seen Tottenham get punished in the past there. So it won't be easy. Let's get predictions, guys, to close. Let's go to Ash. Ash, what are we going for?
I'm going to predict a draw because Sundays are just not for us. They're really not. But
Sundays aren't for us. What day of the week are we now? What are we? Thursdays? Only Thursdays. Only Thursdays.
That's the Thursday, Sunday. It wasn't me. I didn't say it, guys. I would love to be optimistic. I just have a feeling Son played the full 90, didn't get taken off. So Odobert got taken off, and so did Maddison. So I think they're going to start. I reckon Tell might start on the left, and everyone's been saying he's not a striker. So I just want to see what happens when he's in that left-hand space. Tell on the left, Odobert on the right, Solanke up top. I just want to see that dynamic. If we are to be serious. But in the midfield, I'm a bit worried because Bergvall did pull up with a cramp. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, all we can go. I mean, Andrew's been asked in that presser, and we have to take his word for it, although Johnny probably won't, that he's told us that as far as he's aware, you know, we've got a full bill of clean health going into it. I think what's also quite interesting, I don't think anyone's picked up on it here, if listeners on audio, Mikey Moore's just been named in the under-21 Spurs team to play against Blackburn, which is quite interesting because Mikey, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a fall from grace. He's a young kid. Look, he's 18, 19 years of old, but he's gone from playing in the first team, Ash, to being, is it the right word saying, being demoted back to the younger squad? That can't be easy for the kid. Yeah,
we've spoken about this, about the social medias being, you know, deleted and stuff. And he's obviously not happy. Like, he's obviously being told something. But it's crazy because everyone had high hopes for him. I think we still
do. I think the fans have got very high hopes for
everyone. When I say everyone, I was including Ange. I thought Ange would have had high hopes for him. Otherwise, he would be playing him. He would be using him more frequently. But clearly, he's told him something. He's not being featured as much. He was on the bench as well. That confused a lot of people for the first leg when we played AZ. Why he wasn't featured at all.
He tore them apart, didn't he, in the group stage? Mikey Moore. It's a bit of a bizarre one. There's no real explanation as to why he's been demoted to, like I say, the back to the under-21s. Look, a really, really highly rated prospect. And look, he's only, again, we made that point, 17, 18 years old. it's hard to maybe read too much into at this stage, but I'm sure Michael would love to be with the first team. But he's not. But Ash, you're going with Desmond. You're going with a draw. Is that right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ash. Over to Spurs Kings TV. We'll see Ash very, very soon. We love you very much. Loads of content always on Spurs Kings TV. Him and Miles keeping that going as they always do. Let's go to Johnny. Johnny, always a pleasure. It's it's 10 Premier League games to go. It's all on Europe. And I know you were concerned about Mikey Moore, especially we were speaking so much over the phone a few weeks ago. I mean, must be hard for the kid. Listen, still a young man. He got a massive career ahead of him. Doesn't mean because he's been, playing for the under-21s, his Spurs career is over. But I'm sure Mikey must be massively disappointed that he's not obviously featuring in the Premier League games where we had a really exciting young prospect coming through. But again, maybe the signing a tail was maybe pushing down that pecking order. I don't know.
Listen, people called me paranoid weeks ago when I said, I bet you don't see him in a Spurs shirt again this season, like playing. It's seriously worrying me. I've got to be honest with you, because I think there's a possibility he will leave in the summer. I said it then and I'll say it now. I hope I'm wrong, but I think it sends a poor message. It's all very well producing great academy players, but there has to be a chance of a pathway for some of our best players. We've seen Skelly, we've seen Nawani, we've seen Miley at Newcastle. I'm not going to sit here and list all the clubs.
Yeah.
But there was a reason why he deleted his debut goal off of Instagram, and then when he was not played again, he deleted his X account, and then when he was dropped again, I was there at Ipswich away. He didn't look happy, and I said, when we were at AZ and nothing was going right for us, and you've got Mikey Moore sat on the bench who absolutely tore them to shred in the second half at home, give him some minutes, not a minute. And again, on the bench again last night, and he was never going to get a minute. And now Odobert's back and Son's there. He's not going to see the light of day. And it's not just Mikey Moore that I'm worried about, because what message does that send to the rest of the academy? And I'm not going to go through them all. Dave and I know them. Ash knows them. There's certain players there who I've got a big affinity to. And I'm thinking, hey, if there's no path for Mikey Moore, what chance have I got, right? And let me tell you, right, there are plenty of people knocking on the door for our talent. Plenty. And I don't want to be looking back in 3 years' time and saying, we got it wrong. We've let all these people go, all these players go, because we have a manager who's not truly deep down interested in our academy and the future of his club. He's interested in the now for his job.
Well, yes. I mean, it's a hard one, because I mean, I come over to you, Dave, to close. Yeah. I mean, Johnny, thank you so much as always. I think it's a tough one, isn't it, at the moment, Dave? Because the reality is, it is all about keeping his job, because he's got to fight for that at the moment. And the problem is that he is in that catch-22 where, again, we've seen it online, the suggestion that obviously young players haven't really had a chance under him, and the fact, Bergvall and Gray and Spence have pushed their way through really because of the injury to other players. But the Mikey Moore one will be a concern to a lot of avid people. Like Johnny, comes to be clear, Johnny follows a lot of the under-21s, under-18s, under-19s. So for those people that are so committed like you are, Johnny, I know, again, John, who I'm obviously a close friend of mine at Lily White Rose, would be, obviously looking for Mikey to have obviously more regular first-team football. And the thing at the moment is that if these guys can't play football now and we don't have European football next season, please God we do, then you wonder where his opportunity to come. I mean, are we overreacting on that, Dave, that he's been demoted to the under-21s? Or, because again, he's a young player, very, very young player. Talk about someone at 17, 18 years of age here. He's got hopefully a massive career ahead of him.
He's a young player, but you also got to remember Real Madrid, Dortmund and people like that were tracking him before he signed on the dotted line with Tottenham Hotspur. So he's a young player with a lot of options at his disposal. What I will say is, I don't think this is a Postecoglou decision. Being quite frank, you have a look at for instance, right? We had players that come through on under 17s, under 18s, under 21s. Why did the club continue to go and sign young players when they've had some of the most successful young players in the country coming through? So I think, again, is the club focused on bringing through our youngsters? I don't think they are. I think they're more than happy to sell them on to make it look good on the books, because when you sell on homegrown players, it works towards a financial fair play. Yep. You look, and I go back to the decision with team Sherwood with Harry Kane and Sadado. You know, he's got Daniel Levy in saying we're selling Harry Kane tomorrow for 200,000. Why aren't you playing Sadado? You know, and I think there is that sort of what would you call it? I think there is that sort of. Well, I think Levy looks at it that sort of way, that he has no interest in bringing through a lot of these academy kids, to be honest with you, and he's looking to sell them on. Like, the reality is, we can sit here and blame Ange Postecoglou, but even if you just take out the injuries and put Europe into the equation, he's given more opportunities in Europe to youngsters than Nuno, Conte, and Jose Mourinho. So he has given opportunities to these guys more than other managers in the past. I would argue more minutes to youngsters than any other manager since Pochettino. But the reality is, you know, the reason why we're going into Europe every single time we go in there and we're having to register 3 or 4 goalkeepers, it's because they don't want to get ahead of the homegrown players. They don't believe in their academy products. They could have had this sorted by now if they would give them minutes. So I've always argued, we are one of the only clubs in world football, or especially in the Premier League and in Europe, that don't give their own youngsters an opportunity. You go through any Premier League club now, we're looking to buy Tyler Dibbling. The only reason why we're looking to buy him is because Southampton gave him a chance. You know, look, I followed the under-21s last season. I followed them in the under-18s and the under-17s when they won as well. And we've got some real standout players, the best in my lifetime. That's why I was campaigning and advocating for them to be brought through and given opportunities rather than keep going out and squandering money, 30 million a time on a youngster when we've got our own coming through. But it's not only at the club. From my experience by coming out and speaking about these youngsters, many fans would rather give an opportunity to a guy that we've paid to come in here rather than our own. You know, you look at Matisse Tell, I was told how sexy he's going to be, how great he's going to be. Mikey Moore's had more of an impact than Matisse Tell has at this football club over the course of this season and the minutes that they've had. So it goes to show that just because you're buying them in for big money and from a fancy club abroad, it doesn't mean they're better than what we've got. And that attitude needs to be changed at Tottenham Hotspur. I'm fed up with it. In terms of tomorrow, I'm going 2-1 Tottenham, Sunday, I'm going 2-1 Tottenham Hotspur. Continue on the good feel-good factor. There's a massive chance for us to be able to beat Fulham, get into the international break, and come back with renewed optimism to see out the last bit of the campaign. So let's go and get the job done. No one wants to be losing games. Come on.
No, I totally agree on that point. And we'll have to see with regards to, like I say, this young crop of talent that we've got, because there's real high hopes. I think Johnny touched on it earlier as well. Obviously, another one in Luca Barnett-Williams, who's someone that's, I think there's a lot of high hopes
16.
around.
Listen, can I just put it out there, guys? Please. Right, listen, we all can get crabs with the hype, right? He's 16, okay? He ain't going nowhere near the first team. He's not playing no first team. If Mikey Moore and Ajay and Callum will always see it, right, I cannot make the team. Yeah, he's 16 years of age. Please be real, yeah?
Yeah. Listen, we'll see. Listen, I say, all on to Sunday. Massive game for Tottenham in terms of getting that Premier League form back and under control and hopefully trying to go on a run. I want to say a massive thank you again to the wonderful Ash Matty over at Spurs Kings. Please go and check out Spurs Kings. Subscribe over there. Go and make sure you're checking out Johnny over at on his Instagram, Talking Tottenham 1882, and Johnny H3232. I try and always get that right. I think I nailed that one. 32. Johnny, thank you so much. I'm going to see you very, very soon. And a wonderful Dave over the Irish Hotspur, always bringing you match day coverage and more. Make sure you go and check him out. And make sure you keep liking and subscribing to Last Word on Spurs. We'll back with you after Sunday's game against Fulham. From us all here, guys, as always, please keep safe. Keep well. Have a lovely weekend. We'll see you Sunday. And as always, come on, you Spurs.
You Spurs.